Today on r/MaliciousCompliance. You want to review every single candidate? You got it, babe. This is the best time that my warnings went unheeded and made the client regret ever asking. I worked in recruitment for 9 years, and a few years back I had a new client, hiring manager, and she didn't like abiding by the rules set up for the recruitment team. For one thing, we review the applicants, interview the best qualified candidates, and then submitted them to the hiring manager for consideration. Well, this hiring manager couldn't understand why we only sent over 3 candidates in a week. Honestly, she's lucky, as some positions did not garner that many applicants. I explained that we submit 3 candidates for every 1 position available. This ensures that the hiring manager's time was considered when scheduling next step interviews. This wasn't just a standard I set, it was approved by her company's TA bosses, and frankly was standard at another place I used to work as well. Hiring manager, that is absurd. I want to review all of the candidates so I can tell you whom to pre-screen, and then you schedule their interview with me based on my availability. Me. But ma'am, you have almost 100 applicants that met your minimum qualifications. I don't think you really want to devote that much time to reviewing all of these resumes, and honestly some of them were not great. Hiring manager, are you not listening? Send them all over to me and I'll take care of it. Me, yes ma'am. You got it. I'll send those over right away. I wrote an email to the hiring manager immediately after the call, restating the topics discussed by phone, and asked again if she was certain she wanted all of the candidates sent to her. She confirmed. I complied and forwarded to my boss with an explanation that she will take care of reviewing all applicants and my numbers were going to be skewed for the month. I did as requested, selecting nearly 100 candidates in the system and moved them to hiring manager review. Now, what this did was send individual emails for each candidate as an update to the hiring manager, and it would ping her email every 3 days that they weren't reviewed. I smirked, knowing what was about to happen, and my rear was going to get chewed out in about a week. But it felt really good because I knew I was right. 2 days later, my boss calls and says he got an irritating phone call from this hiring manager, who said she never requested this, to which they responded with the information detailed in my email. She was speechless. He let her know that I would go back into the system and back up the candidate process so it would be taken out of her to-do list, and I would continue to send over candidates that were the best fit for the role as described in our processes. I never received pushback from that hiring manager ever again. For our next story. Deny the flexibility you promised? Fine it wine. Cover my shifts and still have to pay me. I was in a supervisory role as a charge nurse. I'd worked in this position for about 3 years. I had great reviews and earned consistent raises and performance bonuses. I approached my managers and requested that they agree to a flexible schedule if I worked on my master's degree. I wasn't asking for time off, I just wanted them to adjust my schedule when it came time for my practical rotations. They agreed, as they wouldn't be losing any productivity and would be gaining a nurse practitioner for the system. About a year I started the program, it became apparent I was going to need to divorce my wife. We'd been married for many years. It was quite a blow. I called the Employee Assistance Program and got some therapy that was very helpful. My managers also suggested I apply for FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, leave due to their concern for my mental health. I was very grateful. I had been working for the system for a number of years and had many hours of PTO, paid time off, saved up. But I figured the FMLA leave would be a smart thing to be approved for in case court times were scheduled when I was working. I was approved for up to 40 hours per week for a year. About a year into my master's program, it became necessary for me to step down from my role as a charge and take a staff nurse position. My main manager was livid. She took it very personally and stopped talking to me and greeting me. I was very hurt initially. As my practical rotations were about to start, I reminded my managers of their promise to be flexible with my schedule. They denied my requests for flexibility and began to schedule me almost entirely for the times I would request off. At first I was frustrated and very hurt that they did this. But I remembered that I was approved for FMLA leave. FMLA is a special form of leave and cannot be denied. As my managers were not keeping their promises, it was with great satisfaction I began to call off every morning I needed to for my rotations. I didn't give them any advance notice because I was not required to. It was with even greater satisfaction I learned my managers began to have to cover my shifts themselves on occasion. As I had PTO hours saved up, I still got paid as well. I finished all of my rotations in this manner and took a job at a different system after I graduated. I worked at the new system for a few years before I was hired back at my old system as a provider. I loved seeing the look on my old manager's face when I took my first shift at her hospital as a provider, and not under her chain of command. Our last story for today. Property management tells me not to fix anything, okay? Back in the 2008 housing crisis, I did some work on the side for a customer's computer system. We got to talking and he had a cheap one-bedroom duplex for rent that was too good to be true. It was a detached garage converted to a one-bedroom little apartment, and it was as plain and basic as they come. The actual house was being rented out, and he was charging the full amount priced for the area, which was high. So the little garage conversation was pure profit for the landlord. I signed a lease for a fixed price that was almost half of what the going rate was for one-bedroom apartments in the area. It was no frills, plain as can be, with the cheapest appliances and amenities possible. Light fixtures from the early 80s, cheapest faucets and countertops money could buy, you get the visual. The elderly landlord and I had an arrangement. I could fix it up so long as I could keep the rent low, and he would allow me to pay for the remaining balance on upgrades if and when things broke. Years go by, and I'm still in this one-bedroom garage conversation and making progress on updating the features. Kitchen faucet is gone, new fancy sprayer head faucet with a bar-style glass cleaner installed. Old toilet replaced with an water-saving tank and bidet installed. 80s lights are gone, LED smart home fixtures installed. Around 7 to 8 years go by, and my rent is still half of the normal going rate for the area, and my landlord is happy with our arrangement. Sadly, he has a heart attack and surgery saves his life. He is no longer able to maintain his active lifestyle and hands the reins of being a landlord to a property management company. This company is as shady and money-hungry as they come. They get a percentage of the monthly rent for their role in taking over the landlord's duties. They immediately hate me and my rental agreement from the start. The month they take over, my rent goes up the maximum limit of 10% plus 5% the cost of living increase for 1 year. I'm not happy with this, as this is a significant bump in my costs. I suck it up, but as a silent protest, I stop making upgrades to the house that first year. 12 months later, exactly, I get a notification that my rent will increase another 10% plus 5% cost of living increase. This is yet another blow to my finances, but I can't really complain as my rent is still well below the average cost for the area. Another 12 months and another 10% plus 5% cost of living, followed by another, the following year. This whole time I had been saving a good portion of my paychecks as a down payment for a house, but these rent hikes were hurting my ability to set aside money for this purpose. My landlord was not happy with the property management company he hired, but couldn't get out of his contract because they were doing maintenance and facility repairs like clockwork. COVID hits and I'd been in this place for 12 years by this point. My rent was still under the average for the area, but not by much. Seeing as this was now just a crappy one-bedroom apartment, I was looking for houses to buy to get me out of this rent gouging arrangement I was in. Right at the peak of the COVID scare in 2020, a pipe bursts in the kitchen and floods the floors, ruining the crappy cabinets, the carpets and the furniture I had nearby. I had renter's insurance that covered most of the costs to what I had lost. Not the nicest furniture, but my couch was a total loss, my desk, entertainment center, and my speaker were severely damaged. In comes property management to assess the repairs and gut out the damaged wood and carpets. I offer to pay for the upgraded wood and countertops as well as request hardwood floors. Nope. They deny my requests. I offer to do the work myself as I'm fairly handy, again denied with an actual written letter stating I'm not to do any work or maintenance on the apartment. I contact my landlord, who has his hands tied because this was the arrangement we had. I'm at a loss of what to do because this property management company is not setting me up with a temporary place to live. Doing all the work while I'm working from home to watch my possessions. There is a literal door-sized hole in my wall as they spend 2 weeks fixing all the damage. They throw out my upgraded faucet, which was undamaged and worked perfectly fine. The upgraded sink, the light fixtures, the tile work I had done, the bathroom faucet, which wasn't even part of the floor damage. They then removed an outlet originally part of the apartment to save on costs. I was pissed at them and complained via letters, via phone calls, and talking to the maintenance supervisor. It took 2 full months to do all the repairs, and at the end, they sent me a notice that my rent was going up due to some loophole in the neglect the apartment was in and not reported. I was done with this bullshit, and I pooled my resources, called in all the favors I could, and found the house I wanted. I gave 30-day notice to leave at the end of my lease, along with an invoice of all the repairs I made to the apartment over the 12 years I was there. I attached a copy of my original lease agreement, a copy of all photos I took of before and after repairs I made, a bill of the costs, and a request of a refund of the past 6 months of additional rent hike, due to neglect like they stated in the letter. I had a running tally of with all the receipts, work performed, and the cost of not being allowed to live in motel during the work being performed to over $9,700. At the same time, I submitted all this to the courts as I knew they would contest all of it. My landlord was on my side during the court hearing, giving testimony he in fact allowed me in the rental lease agreement that I could do my own repairs. I won within 4 hours and awarded $4,700. The judge removed all billable hours I included. Judge was harsh to the lawyer for the property management, saying his client must obey the law and put a tenant up for housing during construction. Nearly 4 years later, I finally got my lump sum including penalties and late fees, which totaled up to $7,500. Sadly, my old landlord passed away, and his properties passed to his son, who immediately fired the property management company sometime early last year. And those are all the stories we have for today. See you tomorrow.